Hi there, my name is Philip Ideson. I want to welcome you to the Art of Procurement podcast, the podcast that helps you, a forward-thinking procurement professional, position yourself and your team to proactively take advantage of the revolution that's taking place in procurement today. By interviewing industry trailblazers and sharing insights from our own experiences, my team and I pull back the curtain and shine a light on the strategies, tactics, and tools that procurement teams are using to elevate their impact. And today on the show, I was delighted to get the opportunity to speak to Mary Purk. Mary is a co-author of the recently published AI Adoption Report, Growing Up, Navigating Generative AI's Early Years, by AI at Wharton and GBK Collective. At the time of our recording, Mary was also the Executive Director of AI at Wharton, which is the AI Academic Research Unit at Wharton, the business school of the University of Pennsylvania. Now, the report provides data on AI adoption trends within businesses and across functions, including procurement, and the impact that AI is having and will have in the future. It's a yearly pulse check on how organizations, teams, and individuals are implementing AI. Now, of particular interest to me and what piqued my interest is that report looking into adoption trends, including procurement across various different business units and how we can baseline and benchmark procurement against those results. So we discussed the specifics of the report, as well as Mary's insights into AI adoption more generally. I started by asking Mary how AI and analytics became her core area of focus.
Well, since undergraduate, I ended up going in. I studied marketing in undergraduate, but my friend who was she was going into accounting. She said, "You should really look at this new company, or not new company, but this new area called management consulting." Was with Arthur Andersen at the time, and this is what became Accenture. And so I chose to go into coding because they basically took smart people and taught them how to code. And so I learned how to do COBOL coding and taking down system requirements. And I thought to myself, it's hard to learn technology. It is hard. And I might as well lean into that now versus, because I could always go back into marketing. And so because of that technical background, I always liked staying close to marketing. And then I kept that technical aspect of coding that then became learning more and more about data. And I then went on to work at Nielsen and another company called Information Resources, which was basically data analytics for retail and CPG companies. And from there, I worked at University of Chicago Booth in a big marketing research center there called the Kiltz Marketing Center on one of the largest point-of-sale databases. And then Wharton sought me out to run their customer analytics research center and then co-found the AI research center. So I say a lot of times you gravitate towards things that might be a little bit more difficult, but you're curious to learn. Right. And because I did that at an early age, I always knew you can learn a lot on the job, but you have to lean into some of those technical aspects that you might not understand, but know that a lot of other people don't understand as well. So often we think we have to be an expert, but you can't be an expert if you're not a novice first to learn.
I love that. A lot of the chief procurement officers that we talk to on the show, the ones that really stand out the most to me are the ones that admit, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this out, whatever this may be, but certain parts of their job that they're seen as being on this pedestal of, they reach the top of the profession and they must know everything. But the ones that are the most vulnerable and so therefore the most curious and the most kind of interesting to new ideas are the ones that are actually setting the standard for the profession to follow, and such an important trait.
And if I could just add one other point that is so important at this particular moment in time, especially in the United States, we do not encourage discovery, or it's okay to fail, or it's okay not to know the exact answer when you're in a meeting. And you need that right now more than ever. We have to encourage people to learn and gain confidence with these new technologies. And that is on the shoulders of leadership within companies, but also within the universities, to really go back and teach critical thinking and give students encouragement that you don't have to have the exact right answer when you come to class. You have to show that you've given effort in discovery when you come to class.
So before we get into the kind of main topic of the conversation, that just drives an interesting point that I just want to ask around is executive education around AI. Because, it's something I was asked in a meeting just before this, and I wasn't really sure of the answer is, in terms of how do you drive that curiosity that AI brings, down into teams. And my thinking is that the executives need to have that curiosity first so they can support their teams. And for people who are listening that aren't necessarily comfortable with what they know from an AI perspective at the leadership level, like any tips, like, where should they go to learn more, to get more kind of educated? Are there free programs that exist? I just love kind of your perspective on where to start.
Yes. So I would say there's lots of different free programs. You can just Google it and things will come up. But one, and I'm not endorsing any one program per se, but Microsoft, being a leader in this area, they now realize you cannot just put product out there and they do not necessarily have a perspective on how to apply it. So I think they are getting much better at offering more free education around this. So if you go to learn.microsoft.com and type in AI, there is an AI learning hub, and there's all different types of courses you could start with, and that will. And I think you also have to know what type of learner you are. So one thing I do, I have a whole list of things, but you do something every single day. Keep a diary if you're committed to it. It's almost like, if you have some health thing that you need to do.
Accountability
to yourself.
Yeah.
And you do have to be curious about it, because if you aren't curious, then you can't apply. And if you can't apply, I don't think you can learn. But do something if you can. Like say I'm going to do, it's like working out. If you're working out on AI, say I'm going to allocate 7 hours a week or 5 hours a week. I like podcasts. So there's one podcast I really like. It's called Hard Fork. And it's, two individuals. They have a great banter back and forth. They always bring interesting people on to it. And it's very relatable. And it has a wide variety of topics. It's not just AI, but because AI is so popular, like 60% of the topics are, and the others are tangential. So, maybe look at the Learn Microsoft podcast. Read. I mean, there's tons of stuff all the time in all these different newspapers and, Fortune, Forbes, HBR, there's Gartner. I mean, so there's lots of information, but have a perspective of what you want to learn around AI and then track it. And then also sign up for webinars. There's lots of, free webinars that you can get involved in, or listen to this great podcast that we're doing on AI in procurement. So you have to make a commitment. So those are some, there's books. There's books that you can read too if you just want something really like a coherent story around a topic. Like Ethan Malik, who works at Wharton, many people know. He wrote a book called Co-Intelligence. Yeah. So there's that.
Well, I'm going to put some links in the show notes for the episode for people to go and take a look at the book, take a look at the Microsoft course, take a look at the podcast, because all great resources. Now, we connected because I came across a survey that you had co-authored and published. We're recording this at the end of November. You published it in October. It's called Growing Up, Navigating Gen AI's Early Years. And I actually came across this on LinkedIn. One of my colleagues posted it and some interesting thoughts around procurement. And so I started to dig into the report a little bit and was interested in what some of the findings were, specifically related to procurement, but also you took kind of a broader perspective across a variety of different operating divisions within an organization. Before we kind of dig into the data, I just wonder if you could share a little bit about what the report is and kind of the research study that underpins it.
Yeah, so this was a report. We did actually, we're going to be doing this annually, and we might even do something semi-annually, but annually, where we're taking what we would call a pulse on the industry in terms of their adoption of AI. or pulse of AI, because honestly, we're just barely getting into the adoption phase. In doing so, we surveyed this particular year, we surveyed 800 companies and across all industries, like you indicated. So it's key because it's across all industries and all job functions. And we took the perspective of leaders and employees. So there's these perceptions. And, we consolidated, and now we're comparing it to last year. Like, what has changed? The way you can learn about a trend, and we forget this because we're just like, it's like a fire hose of information coming through, is you look in the past so that you can start, to look to the past. History helps us digest lots of information, helps us digest and formulate opinions. So anyways, this is the second year. There'll be a third, that we'll do it next year. And there's two co-authors, Stefano Bertoni. He's a professor of marketing at Wharton, and Jeremy Corse, he's a managing partner in GBK Collective. So a consulting company. So the three of us, we did this. Yes, it's across it was a broad perspective, but we do have some information that drills down to procurement. The reason why I think it's good to look across industries and across department adaptation is that you can quickly possibly pinpoint where you are. There's a baseline of where your company is or where your department is, so that you can have that perspective and you can bring that to the table and say, this is where we should invest. We're ahead or we're behind. And also, you can learn from other successful use cases in different departments and in different industries. And then finally, and we'll go into this, the top use cases that we identify where it's happening, AI is being adapted first, is really important so that everyone understands why are all these new products coming out that are very specific to knowledge documentation. And, there's there's going to be a proliferation of that. And you might be like, okay, I don't need knowledge documentation. I need something that's going to help us more with pricing. And so just know that use case might be coming later. So it helps you kind of sift through all the noise and filter through all the noise because you only have so much time in the day.
Yeah. Now, I love you're going into different departments within the organization, because I certainly feel this sometimes with my procurement hat on, is you wonder if you're in this bubble, and the things that you think about are, sometimes you think, well, these are only procurement issues, and actually they're issues that are prevalent across the organization. And you don't necessarily understand the fears, the challenges, of your peers within an organization because you just have your procurement hat on. So it's going to be really interesting when we start talking very specifically about the purchasing and procurement data. Now, I know this is kind of an open-ended question, but from the kind of high-level observations of the research, what are some of the key themes or trends that you pulled out for 2024?
Well, first and foremost, some of the largest trends are that we really see, I think, in a digestible way, that in 2023, it was really a trial year for everyone. I mean, ChatGPT, hit the marketplace in, and we're almost coming up on the 2-year, the 2-year anniversary is in 2022. It just seems like, it was like
November 22 was the
2-year anniversary was the,
yeah,
we can't believe it. Right. And, it was the fastest, it was the number one, downloadable, consumer application in history in that short period of time. I mean, the adaptation of people trying it was just unheard of. And it went right to the individual. So again, just thinking about that, how, cloud technology, that did not go down to the individual. It still is not down to the individual. I mean, people are like, where is it? Is our data just floating up in the sky? People do not understand, data was in these data centers and such. So people could touch it, feel it. So that's why I think that's really good to understand. So that was a trial. So this year, everyone, from our analysis, we understand that there's experimentation. So, in 2023, 37% of those surveyed reported using generative AI once a week. This year, our study it took place in July of 2024, 2-week time period that we interviewed, senior leaders, like I said, 800 companies across all these different industries and departments. 72%, nearly doubled, 72% reported using Gen AI at least once a week. So that was a big difference. The spending continues to increase. It was up 130% since 2023. But we will talk about how, is it going to continue to grow or is it going to level out? And also, because it was in trial and people were very optimistic and excited in 2023, they were also kind of curious and cautious. They're like, what is this? How is this going to impact me? And because people have been able to experiment with it, not only personally, but some people within their jobs, they'll go and use it at home and then they get that idea and bring it to work. They're really pleased and excited about the technology. And they're less amazed and curious because they're actually able to apply it. So those are some of the general observations, as well as we can probably go into what some of these budgets and like who's pushing this forward. We can go forward into that. It's mostly internal and not necessarily consultants that are doing it. I thought that was a very interesting finding. Only 7% of companies said that consultants were actually leading. So I think, again, we're at this very, very early stage, which for procurement individuals, as well as any individual at the company, now is the time to raise your hand and sit at the table where your company is deciding on use cases, because that is going to transform your trajectory in the industry, in the company. It's not always going to happen because soon enough leaders are going to come in and they're going to decide. But there's open seats at that table. It's like musical chairs. So I would grab one of those, learn a little bit more about AI, grab one of those chairs and raise your hand. Do not wait to be asked.
That's really, really interesting. So it's like a window. So the fact that it's not necessarily driven by consultants suggest that there's a lot of experimentation going inside, companies within their own employees. But that window of being in control of your own destiny, of figuring out how you can apply this to your own day-to-day before somebody comes and tells you this is how it's going to affect you. And by the way, when they come and tell you how this is how it's going to affect you, that might not be in a good way for you as an individual.
So right now, middle management is in charge of this. Middle management is, because CEOs, boards, they have other things they're worrying about, the financials, governance, new product launches. They are not worried about, and they've considered this a technology. So they're not experimenting with it, and they know they have to, and they're trying to do catch up right away. But the middle managers have had this in their hands for at least a year. I mean, but whether it's not officially at your company, they've been experimenting with it in the ideation of it. And consultants, so the leaders, the CEOs and the boards have not called in the consultants to say, oh my God, there's huge change management that's going to be coming to our company. Everyone's trying this. It's all over the place. It's unorganized. We need to rein this in. Mm-hmm. And unless middle management helps sit at that table and be, the advice of this C-suite, and maybe there might be a few C-suite people that are doing that as well. I'm just saying there's a lot of opportunity for middle managers to really help guide your company, and it's not going to be that way forever. And also so that's the first part. The second part, leaders should note that employees are really excited, from our survey, very excited about the technology. They're not, they're not as worried about it taking over their jobs just yet, because the companies haven't figured out how to do that. Yeah. So they haven't figured out how it's going to possibly rearrange the skill set of the company. So leaders should realize then once they're not so certain how that's going to happen, then there's going to be some of this uncertainty, and maybe employees aren't going to share as much knowledge as they want to share. So there's this really dynamic, I would say, situation for the next 12 to 18 months where employees are being innovative. They're being very positive. They could cooperate more with change management, and middle managers can really elevate their status in the company until CEOs and C-suites and consultants start to run the show.
That's fascinating insight, because one, it gives it should motivate folks at the middle layer that they have the ability to kind of set the agenda in terms of how AI is embraced, adopted, and used in a way that is a positive for them. But that is that window may be finite in time, so you got to jump on it.
It always is. It always is. And then this is the other way I think people, employees, middle managers, and their teams can ensure their job employment, because they are the best SMEs. They're better than the consultants.
Yeah.
They're really good at what they do. And so they can help problem solve. But there will be times where they're like, okay, we need help in like designing the process overall. And I mean, consultants have their place in this, but this technology, you have hopefully your company is it digitally transformed, right? And hopefully you have everything in the cloud. You have really good data, good quality data, good access to data. Hopefully those tools are in place. That's in place, then the middle managers really can soar with this technology.
So let's talk about procurement specifically. You, as we talked about, you surveyed a variety of different departments within the organization around usage of AI in a week, and I think something around kind of skepticism or embracing the technology. When it comes to the use of generative AI, procurement sits at really the large. I'm looking at the results now. 94% of respondents within purchasing and procurement said that they use generative AI at least once a week, up from 50% in 2023. But that 94% was the highest across all the different departments that you looked at. I think finance and accounting, 76%, IT, 75%, HR, 75%, and the baseline for everybody was 72%. Was that surprising in any way for you, or did that kind of align with what your anticipation from the results would be?
It was surprising, and I'm so excited that you were able to highlight that, because you saw the forest from the trees there, right? And we're just looking, oh, look at all this, is like everyone's adopting it. So I appreciate that you put a really good magnifying lens on that, and I think it's really it's something that we as academics should actually look into further, why that is. Some of it could be because last year procurement really was asleep. And I don't want, and it's not, I'm saying this in a bad way, but yeah, you're on your plate all the time that you are doing constantly. And so I think procurement was just like, is this real? Is this like, cyber? Is it really going to affect us? How can we use it? Because some companies are like, you can't even use it. And so many, I don't know if there was this underground swell of like, God, this is really good technology. This is how I use this particular, this particular application to solve this problem. And so there might have been more sharing of use cases and such, where there was such a big, like time savings, cost savings, revenue savings, that's where that trial adopted so quickly. So for two reasons. One, they weren't using it that much in 2023. So when they caught up, that's why they caught up. You could really see that it jumped to that level. But I think we know the reason why there was so much adoption that happened so quickly from 2023. So that would be good for another expert to question.
And I think just looking at the numbers as well, from what we see, there's the integration of AI into procurement technology has exploded in the last year. So there's more opportunities for procurement leaders to leverage AI and generative AI, as you would expect, as as product sets mature and start implementing AI. So I think there's that curiosity that exists. I say this with my procurement siloed hat on. that we are certainly always being pushed even more so than ever to do more with less. And so the efficiency plays around using AI and using generative AI and the LLMs is an attractive one on an individual basis. So even if it's not necessarily adopted at an enterprise level yet, tools have been made available to people, like whether it's enterprise grade ChatGPT, whether it's Copilot, whatever it may be, that procurement professionals are wanting to experiment to use it because they're at max capacity, and see the efficiency gains that are possible with using it.
Mm-hmm. Especially within the efficiency gains, you can compare contracts so much more quickly. I mean, right there, that has to save people so many hours. I mean, if that's, one of the main things they use it for, is one, creating the right RFP and comparing the contracts in a very succinct way. I mean, you can put the contracts in and then say, I want it in an Excel spreadsheet, and these are the top parameters I want to see. And, give this contract, a negative point if they did not address these top parameters that I told them to address in the RFP. I mean, so you can be very, very specific. And the procurement managers, some of probably the best ones, are now realizing that ChatGPT is basically an assistant to them and an analyst to them that they didn't necessarily have. Like, they all need their own personal analyst, but companies aren't going to give it to them. So they can use it for that. The other thing that I didn't mention earlier is that within procurement, because as you said so clearly and wisely, that it's basically an efficiency play that you are constantly trying to beat, that you have to implement. And with that, everyone's trying to do that. So that's not unique to procurement, but what's unique is that that's what you're judged on, and procurement is more of a lower risk in comparison to like healthcare, life sciences, financial institutions. So all those are, because of the really, really any highly regulated industry is going to be a little bit slower to the adoption and application, versus I think within the procurement, it's on a little bit, and parts of the procurement are on the lower side of adoption. Yeah. So that's to the advantage to be a leader versus a follower.
Do you find, do you hear conversations around make versus buy when it comes to AI applications? Because, you have obviously a lot of info security concerns from large enterprises in terms of putting this information, at the mercy of a generative AI tool. I wonder if you could just share a little bit about what you hear, or if you see that that's kind of a direction of travel in terms of how you access AI, that you build your own tools.
Yeah. So first and foremost, they're very, very, very expensive to build. And then once you build it, they're also expensive to maintain. And so just know that I would always research what is out there and why you would not take the shelf product and customize it to you. Like, I mean, this is where consultants could help, and certainly the vendors. So Microsoft, and again, they all have this. I'm just most familiar with the Microsoft product because I just on a call with them. But they, you have the free version, Copilot, is free. And then you have where you're buying a license individually. Both of those, there's data that you're kind of sharing out to the world. And then there's the enterprise version. And these enterprise versions, this is where your legal team, and hopefully you might have an AI committee, you have a compliance team. They are going to drill down and understand within the contract, all the data that you put into your enterprise model stays on site and doesn't go into, these larger language models that are, we're all like individually we would have access to. So Microsoft has, there's another company called Inflection AI where literally you This was this is a newer company that's been funded by Reid Hoffman, and that particular model, you get the code of that model, and it's on your site. So there's this agreement that they have. You can't sell that model to anyone else, right? But you own that model. So, for example, if you were a government entity and you have to prove out to the government that do you understand this model and such? Where does all this data go? Where's the model reside? You can say the model resides on our site.
Yeah, and you complete control of it.
Yeah. So I think it's important, and procurement's really good at this, is saying, here are all our requirements. And then, doing the interviewing and the intake and from the RFPs to see what is, if it meets that recommendation. Now, some company like JP Morgan, they just announced they produce their own LLM called LLM Suite. How original, but right. It's their own. They built it, but they have the money to do this. I mean, it costs millions and millions and millions of dollars to build these models.
I think it's a debate that's going on in the procurement space at the moment, and granted, only in the larger, the largest of large organizations that would have the investment to put towards building their own models if they chose to. But then I think that sometimes creates, well, if the big companies are doing it, there's skepticism of adoption, for smaller companies that may be just an excuse, not to embrace more Gen AA.
But here's what I would say, and this is where leadership comes into play. I mean, if I was on a leadership team, I'd say, okay, why are these models that we can buy, why are they not good enough? Like, what is the problem? Like, what is the security problem? And is that security problem going to go away? If it's around the data, let's look at what our hindrance is. What's our impediment? Then let's invest more in securing our data. But they do that best. They built the model. They have these unbelievably smart engineers. Do you think we have better engineers than that to build that type of large language model? I would challenge, because resources are finite. So if you decide to go and invest and build your own model, you better have, that you're going to be able to keep those data engineers to maintain that model. That's what I love. I mean, it's kind of like, do we all know how to, give ourselves the oil changes and, all these technical things that have in our car? We pay a lot of money to get those cars fixed, right? But they know all the technical things. Or even when you try to fix a home appliance at home, it takes you 5 times as long as if you just called the expert to come in. And, it's so much more peace of mind. And then you could have done something else with that time, right? So that's how I would look at it. It's resources to finance.
And if those companies are not successful in building in that security, then the commercial model's not going to exist anyway.
Yes.
For them to succeed. Now, one of the things that I wanted to bring up was you studied or surveyed whether leaders believed that Gen AI was having a positive impact or not. So high impact, medium impact, low impact. As I look at the results of that, we talked about procurement and purchasing being high adopters, but actually in terms of the perception of impact, purchasing and procurement was second lowest in terms of those that believed it had a high impact. Legal was lowest at 28%. Purchasing and procurement was next at 35%. And it went all the way up to business intelligence 46%, IT 58%, and lots in between. It's interesting that the correlation between being an adopter and not seeing it have an impact yet is one.
It might be a lagger. It might lag. So I think that's what will be interesting to see next year. It might be lagging because they did not see the evidence of the efficiency or revenue generation from the implementation of the technology yet when this was being done. That's first. And secondly, depending on how I'm not saying well educated, but depending on how many had really invested in learning about the technology, they may be just slow adopters in learning the technology overall. and their leadership encouraging them to do that because they might be overtaxed and they have other things that they've had to really focus on. Coming out of COVID and these supply chain issues and everything, I don't know if they're still all the way caught up with everything that they're still trying to solve for with inflation and everything. So, procurement's just had to deal with just real macroeconomic pressure.
Right.
And they do not have the time to even go, I'm going to sit down and, learn about AI. They can't even catch up with their daily work that they have.
Yeah. And one thing, honestly, we're not that good at is measuring kind of impact, measuring success, having good metrics. And so it may be just a lack of really understanding how do I define what high impact is? I feel it helped me, but or maybe there's a fear of, if we say it's having a big impact, then that means the more of it will come. And I'm, encouraging my own demise to the conversation we had earlier.
No. I mean, two key things: you got to lean in and learn about AI and try to be at that table where you can decide on those use cases or develop a use case that you can convince management to do, but to invest in. Along with that, and again, procurement is really good about that. I'm surprised that they don't know they can't. I mean, I think they have to understand really good metrics. Now, I'm sure they can in the process flow, but then in terms of the macro metric of how it impacts the company, because you're so focused in that one swim lane, this is where you have to branch out and say, okay, I am not going to be the cog in the wheel. I am going to be the one who's spinning the wheel because I touch all parts of the business. So I have access to all that. So I can figure out how much we're saving or how much revenue we're generating because of this new technology. And we're just that much better educated to continue to advance in your career.
So the last thing I want to just talk about, we've only got a couple of minutes left here, was around budget investment and how each department is investing in Gen AI over the next 2 to 5 years. And you asked some questions around that space. Purchasing and procurement, just to give your findings there, was 26% said they would increase substantially budget. 58% said they would increase somewhat, and 15% said it would remain the same. I do see a kind of a cautious wait and see approach to investment in Gen AI, or a, take my money kind of philosophy that organizations are kind of finding that they don't want to miss out.
I think what it's indicating is that it went from 0 to 100%. Like it wasn't in the budgets before. So everyone was like, 20%. We're, because we went from, nothing to, like $100,000 or, 200 or a couple million. And so it was at a very, very high investment rate. And what you see in that, and then it's starting to slow down because the budgets can't continue to be sustained at adding 20% more to generative AI or AI projects. So it's what I would be called, it's a line item. That's what's really key. It's a line item and it continues to be invested in. And what was interesting, I thought about that takeaway, is that there was not any decrease. They weren't taking the money away from the budgets. So if you haven't put it in as a line item for your department for AI investment, you should. I mean, assuming that, your staff is being educated on it and you have use cases more. And you can look to this report to say, why haven't we started investing? We are behind. So you can, look into your industry to see where people are investing in that. So it's the fact that it's not decreasing, but it's maintaining that level of investment, which means it's going to be around for a while. They're going to need experts in it. And so I think that affords opportunity specifically for procurement because there are so many different places in which you can apply the technology with really good use cases that can get fairly in short order results. You only have to wait 6 months to find the result of this. You'll be able to see it in maybe a 6 week to 2 month time frame.
And we're in a great position to help the rest of the organization kind of understand what's in the marketplace, just given our role as procurement folks and what we see in supply market. Mary, I know it's time to wrap up, so I want to thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. We will include a link to the report. Again, the report is called, I'm just scrolling to the front, Growing Up, Navigating Gen AI's Early Years. We'll put a link to that in the show notes for today's episode, because there's a lot more insights that we didn't have the time to dig into today. But if anybody who's listening would like to reach out, connect directly, learn a little bit more, where would be the best place for them to find you?
I would, reach out on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Mary Purk. I have 2 other co-authors, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Stefano Pantoni and Jeremy Corse. All of us can be reached at LinkedIn. And then, you can also look for us at the Wharton website. But the easiest way, I think, quickest way would be through LinkedIn. Once you see the report, the link that we give you there, that's linked to the center that I'm a part of, which is AI at Wharton. It's also part of a larger entity called Wharton AI and Analytics Initiative. We have webinars, AI Horizons that we do. So there's a lot of different free information, knowledge at Wharton. So there's AIs in that. So I'm just offering that as another resource to learn about AI as well. But thank you so much, Phil. It was really delightful to spend this time with you to talk about how AI is going to affect procurement.
Yeah, I know that we could probably talk about a lot more as well. So we'll have to make sure we do this again. When you get some more findings as well, go over next year's, compare next year's versus this year's. But a pleasure for you to join us. We'll put links, as I say, to all your LinkedIn profiles of you and your co-authors, Jeremy and Stefano, and a copy of the report, and also the Wharton AI resources that you referenced. So again, thank you very much for joining me.
If this episode struck a chord with you, please do send it to somebody. We grow here at Art of Procurement through word of mouth, and that would be really appreciated. You can also support us by giving us a thumbs up, a star rating, or a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Since 2015, we've built the world's largest free resource for procurement professionals looking to elevate their impact. Our resources span podcasts like this, videos, blog posts, papers, and events. To join us on the inside and to ensure you never miss an episode, a webinar, an event, or a post, please do subscribe to our weekly newsletter, This Week in Procurement. You can do that at artofprocurement.com/subscribe. That's artofprocurement.com/subscribe. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.